All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm here today with a very special guest, someone that I met a couple weeks ago at the DC AI Expo that Palantir was at. Kat Orman. Kat, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Kat she's a really cool person. Apparently, she's building a very important startup. The startup she's raised some money for. She's probably dropping out of Yale to continue building the startup, and she's working with Palantir to help her build a company as well. So we got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. As a kid, super ambitious. You're reading hieroglyphics at 4 years old. You're on Middle Eastern Egyptian news. Then you get into high school, and then eventually from high school, you do a lot of cool stuff there. And then you get into Yale. What was life like in an Ivy League? A lot of things are going on in the Ivy Leagues right now. And what made the decision easier for you to quit your last year of Yale to do the startup?
Yeah. So I did not end up dropping out of Yale. I took some time off, but I did end up just going back in Zoom school and finishing up.
Oh, really? So you finished? Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So I finished up. I actually wrote my thesis on drone programs in the Vietnam War, which was super interesting. And I mean, it's a history degree, so it's pretty easy lift. Like it's not,
but it's Yale.
It's not difficult to do that and be full time.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed Yale. I feel very close to my friends from there. I do think I was there pretty close to peak woke. And that was definitely apparent on campus.
How?
Yeah. And I think I had a lot of conversations where I think I went into college really expecting, really hoping to find this community of unbounded intellectual curiosity. And I found in conversations about things that you wouldn't even necessarily think of as being political, everything really gets filtered through this lens of the person with the power and the agency is bad, and the person that doesn't have power and doesn't have agency is good. And I found that a lot of conversations that I had, even about things that you would not think of as being hot button or really related to that, were really colored by that. And I feel people have a lot of cognitive dissonance, this really confused relationship to power on campus, where obviously you go to an Ivy because you want to be part of this powerful legacy institution. And obviously you do want you do want power and prestige and all of that, but then the only conversation that you're having on campus is how legacy institutions, power, prestige are deeply evil, and the only conversation is about criticizing that.
This is fascinating to me because the kids at Yale are some of the most privileged and elite kids on the planet. It is what it is, right? You're in this institution. It kind of sets you up for life. And at the same time, simultaneously, it's almost like this guilt of we shouldn't be this privileged. Do you think that's hypocrisy that's just stupid to have, and they should actually go out and make a difference like you are in the world and use the privilege you have and the elitism to build cool shit?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the only way. Yeah, I think that's the only constructive mindset. I actually think it's more. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations. I'm very online. I've had a lot of conversations about the wokes that are ruining this country. In online spaces by people that are not that way in the last 2 years. And one thing I would say is I actually think it's a lot more sincere.
Yeah.
And a lot more deeply felt than people think it is. And I think it is I think it's really caught up in, there's also a mental health crisis on a lot of those campuses. And I think that plays, that dynamic plays a much bigger role in people feeling really bad about themselves than you would think.
What is your decade-long view for the Ivy Leagues? Do you think they fall down the drain, or do you think they end up maintaining their prestige?
No, I think they're going to be fine. I think there's a pretty big pendulum swing that's happening right now. I actually think a lot of people have underestimated how much COVID played into a lot of people changing their attitudes about the role of the state and the importance of community and what the right role is for those things in your actual life. And I think, I think that it's kind of on its way out, and the Ivy League is going to right itself.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Flyby, and then we'll get even deeper into this. So Flyby Robotics, that is the company that you have started. US-made autonomous drones, some pretty cool shit, especially as defense tech is getting more exciting to a lot of the VC landscape. When did you and how did you come up with the idea to start a drone company?
Yeah, for sure. So I did not come up with the idea. That credit all goes to my co-founder, who's our CEO, Jason. But we were students at Yale, and we had this very ZERPy, very college idea that we were going to do drone delivery. And so this involved like us literally, we like did an app, and we would literally like jerry rig off the shelf drones and fly chicken sandwiches to other dorms, to our friends on other dorms.
It's insane.
And we were like, we had this idea that we were going to do consumer facing drone delivery. And we raised a little bit of money for that. Actually ended up hiring a really cool team of extremely talented engineers who are a lot smarter than I am. And we, in the process of doing that, we were building things on top of off-the-shelf drones. And so we realized that we were super limited as developers, both from a hardware and a software perspective, in terms of what we can do. So you can't add, if you want to add something like a winch that's just physically on the outside of the drone, that's very limited by the drones that were commercially available at that time. If you want to access on-edge compute to like write software that tells the drone what to do in certain situations, it either like the systems either just don't have that compute available or they lock you out of it. So they don't give developers an SDK. Like it's the things that you can do on like the things that you can do in software development are much more limited on commercially available drones right then.
Right.
So then last year we ended up realizing like we should really be building our own drone. And we mocked up something, put it on Reddit just to get some feedback from other drone pilots. And we were like, hey, what do people think of this? And we were immediately overwhelmed by the response from people who wanted to buy it. People were like, I'm a drone pilot, I'm a surveyor, I'm in public safety, I'm in oil and gas, I'm in energy, and I've been looking for something like this for months. And so we realized this was a much more important problem for us to be solving than flying chicken sandwiches to college dormitories. And we decided to go all in on drone manufacturing last year.
So it went from a commercial application of drones, almost kind of like an Amazon Prime delivery product that they're doing with drones, to something much more deeper than that, as you realize the problem was much more advanced than just consumer delivery.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of startups end up building, like they start with one idea and then what they actually ended up being successful in is commercializing something that they built as an internal tool.
Right.
So it's a lot of the best products, they're built by people who they say, I actually need to use this thing.
Yeah, I think Slack to an extent kind of started like that, where they built it for themselves and then realized this was...
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so let's talk about the drone market writ large. One of the largest companies, DJI, I believe, is commanding the drone marketplace. Why do you guys feel this is the right time to take up some of the behemoths in the drone space? And I guess, what do you think is the differentiating moat that you guys have compared to them?
Yeah, so there's a really important why now around DJI. So 80% of the drones that are flying around America's airspace are made by DJI or other Chinese companies. And that's problematic because they have, this tight relationship to the Chinese Communist Party. And this type of drone, it's basically used to inspect critical infrastructure. So whether that's bridges, our energy generation, the cracks in the containment concrete around nuclear reactors, all of that information about the vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure is literally being live streamed to a foreign adversary right now. That's the status quo. And so all of these different states have started to ban DJI in these different states, and also like in the most recent NDAA. So a lot of these are either government use cases directly, or it's private firms that do a lot of state contracting. But there are all of these, like every operator, whether it's a police department, a fire department, civil engineering firm, they have this ongoing conversation about how do we switch our fleets off of DJI. But there's just no American incumbent for this size class, particularly that has.
Why do you think that's the case? Why aren't there any American companies taking?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, like America doesn't have the manufacturing base. Like America doesn't have a Shenzhen, right? And so because America doesn't have a Shenzhen, America hasn't been able to come up with a DJI. But that's what we're trying to do. And I also think there's a case to be made. Like the venture ecosystem has not supported like hardware businesses and innovation in hardware the same way that they've supported innovation in software. And so this is just such a back of house use case that the other people that have looked at this problem are not they're not people that think about like software. They're not people who think about being a platform.
Right.
So it's been it's ended up with a very different experience for the pilot than what DJI has been able to provide. But I think the conversation around that is really changing. And that's why now's the moment to jump in.
Well, okay. So this China ban, that's a pivotal moment for the conversation to start changing. And what I've noticed as I've been covering Palantir, and we'll talk about them in a bit, defense tech has started pouring hundreds of billions back into startups like yours that think there is a potential marketplace, even though you're not a pure play software company. Why do you think the US venture ecosystem is putting money into companies like you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think people like Palantir probably is the biggest one, have shown that you can build a venture scalable business that involves government contracting. So I think a huge credit goes to them for being one of the first people to ever do it and show that it's possible to actually go public on that route. I mean, I think another reason is like tensions are kind of heating up with China, and I think people are realizing, well, if we have, supply chains for all these things that we really need, then end up getting choked off if we lose this relationship, that leaves us in a really bad place. And we need to invest in reshoring those capabilities.
It's really interesting, dude, because it's not, I mean, a lot of other companies are starting to see some money pour into you guys, even if it's not a software SaaS type of business, because
even if you're not B2B SaaS, where you can still, there's a lot you can do if you're not B2B SaaS.
Okay. So, you got funded, you guys have raised some money. How big do you think Flyby in particular can be?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to look at that. So our flagship product, which is the F11, basically, I can give you a sense of just where that fits into the market. So they're the equivalent of the Chinese-made, like incumbent equivalent of this product. It's not like a teeny little selfie drone. It's also not a big, giant, like $100,000 drone that's for defense. So this is what's called a commercial, like medium lift drone, which means you would put 5 or 6 pounds of payload that's usually just a really high resolution, really high powered modular sensor on it, and fly it around something that you would want to inspect. So there's about 1,500 police departments in the United States right now that are using these types of drones for something called DFR, which is drone as first responder. One of the really cool things that they do is if you live in Santa Monica, which is where I live, and if you get mugged there, the first responder on the scene will actually not be a police officer. It'll be one of these drones in the sky that you might not even know is there. And so that drone can zoom in on you getting mugged for your assailant and basically tell the responding forces on the ground, like, okay, he has a gun, he doesn't have a gun, he has something that, might have looked like a gun, but actually it's not that. He went this way, he went that way. So that's one of the use cases that's growing really fast. They're also used on construction sites for something called VDC, or virtual design and construction. So they do photogrammetry, which is when you fly a drone with a camera on it around this really big building, and you take a bunch of pictures and you stitch it together into a 3D reconstruction.
Right.
You put LiDAR on it, and you can do that for site surveying, for civil engineering, for like bridges, rail inspection. They're used by a bunch of departments of transportation. So all this is to say that this is used in pretty much every like major industry where you would need to like map data to the real world on like an industrial scale. And so according to the FAA, these types of drones have been growing in the United States like roughly 20% year over year.
Right.
So there's one bet that you can make where you can say, for this flagship product, like coming in and disrupting that 80% market share for that like really fast growing product category, of which there are probably like a couple 100,000 of these flying around the US alone right now. That's kind of like the base case bet that we can make. But the more interesting bet that we can make is seeing these drones as one of the most important ways in which AI will come in and enter the physical world. And drones is like kind of the natural platform for that. And realizing nobody's built a drone as a platform for that like heavy on-edge compute for those use cases.
Okay, so that's what I want to touch on, this drone as a platform for on-edge compute. But before we get to that, so how big? Couple hundred billion, a trillion? You think this could be a really big shot? Do you think this is going to make a lot of your investors filthy rich one day?
That's exactly, yes. That's
yes, that's the answer. Right. Okay, good. We don't need a number. We just need a yes. Okay, so drone as a service for computational infrastructure at the edge. We've heard a lot about AI at the edge. Palantir has a software or a product called Meta Constellation, which does AI at the edge. For someone who doesn't really know what AI at the edge is, what is that, and why do you need the hardware to support the compute for AI at the edge like a drone?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the really unique things that Flyby has done is we built this entire drone around a really powerful GPU, which is the NVIDIA Jetson Orin NX. And so the difference between like when you build hardware around a GPU, one of the unique things that we've done is every piece of data that the sensor takes in, and also that the drone takes in. So every piece of telemetry data, whether the sensor is looking like left or right, what it's seeing, all talks to the Jetson. And it all like goes through the Jetson. The Jetson can talk to it right back and tell it what to do. So any program that you could write on the Jetson that basically says, okay, using machine learning, if you're seeing this, these are the kind of decisions that you can make actually in flight. You can do on our drone, which gives developers like an unprecedented capability for the drone to actually take in the information about what it's seeing and make decisions while it's in flight instead of like uploading it on like a little USB later.
Right. So that drone as a platform, is that like a software business to an extent as well?
Yeah. So we see this as like a platform play, like basically a software business with a hardware mode. So what we're trying to do is, make these drones at the moment where people are trying to switch from Chinese made to American made drones, and then be a platform for developers like Palantir to build really interesting things on Flyby.
Okay, so let's get into the Palantir discussion. So you guys were at the conference. You guys actually got to meet Alex Carr. First of all, how was that meeting?
He was so cool. Yeah, that was really cool. Everyone on the team that we've met is wonderful.
Yeah, it was super cool. Just there's a picture right here I'll put up of you and your co-founder getting to meet the guy. There you go. You go. Why do you think there is a symbiotic relationship between you guys and Palantir Software?
Yeah, for sure. So going into this, like our big thesis basically was, one, people need American made drones, and two, people need drones that are built for developers, that aren't these like little, that aren't these like little sort of test like kit systems. Like people need drones that are commercial scale, like commercial quality, IP rating, and so forth, that you can actually modify and build things on top of. And so I think it was after like Jason, our CEO, tweeted something a little bit ago that Shyam saw, and came in and was like, we completely agree with you like on both of these fronts. And so they were the first person to come in and say, we want to build something really interesting on your platform.
Huh. So Shyam actually reached out to you guys and said, like, he was being a salesman. He was like literally hitting you guys up and trying to get this done. He
was so cool. Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's just like Shyam. I mean, he's always hardworking, trying to just get the next opportunity. So they want to build something integrated with you guys. And the idea there is that you guys are building a really unique drone platform. What is Palantir kind of offering? Is it something around AI or LLMs that helps work it with Foundry, the data pipeline, or exactly how is there a integration?
Yeah. So what they're building on Flyby right now is something called APNT. So it's assured positioning, navigation, and timing. And so what that means is when drones are flying around battlefield environments like Ukraine, they're often GPS denied. So there's the adversary is jamming the drone's ability to talk to the GPS satellites that allow it not only to navigate, but also just to position hold and fly stably. So there's this question of like, how do you get a drone to fly and be able to do things in GPS denied environments? And the way that Palantir's visual navigation team has tackled that is using that APNT, where basically we put a camera on the belly of the drone that looks directly down, and it compares what the drone is seeing to a map of satellite reference imagery that's in its head. And it says, okay, like this is where I am based off of that.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's what we're working on at the moment.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it's not part of FedStart, but that's also kind of the vision as well. If you guys ever want to sell into the government, that's where potentially Palantir can help you.
Yeah, so there's not too much I can speak to about like the future of where that might go, but that is the capability that we presented at SVSP. Yeah.
Okay, so from the commercial application, the one that you are the most excited about is the supply chain police type of version, or what is the most exciting?
So that's public safety. I think the commercial application that we're the most excited about right now is actually inspection in energy generation and oil and gas. So these types of drones, you put like an infrared camera or a hyperspectral camera on there, or just an optical like RGB camera like the Sony ILX-LR1, and you can fly it over solar farms and say like, here are the hotspots where these solar panels are damaged. You can fly it all around wind turbines and detect like damage and corrosion there. PG&E uses these types of drones to fly around transmission lines and say, okay, here's where vegetation is encroaching onto these lines and potentially causing forest fires. So that's one area where like drones are very, very, very well suited to inspect something that needs a lot of inspection and make a really big impact in terms of like how safe our energy generation can be. And one of the really cool things One of the really cool things where AI comes into play is so like on oil rigs, on offshore oil rigs, you have to deal with finding leaks. So people put like these massive $100,000 OGI, optical gas imaging sensors on these drones to try to detect, has there been a leak of methane, which is, very difficult to do manually. And so people have done methane detection on these drones before. But one thing that you can do when you have that on-edge compute on the drone itself is you can do methane quantification. So you can start to use AI to say, okay, I'm sensing a little bit of methane here. Like, let me triangulate where this is actually coming from and find the source of the leak, which can be very, very difficult to do. Obviously, very damaging to the environment if it goes unchecked, and not to mention like hundreds of thousands of dollars in EPA fines.
Do you think also that's why this is the right time to build a company, just given where AI really takes role with the hardware that you guys are building?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's massive headwinds there. And with the Jetson, like you could literally mine Bitcoin on our drone, like while it's in flight, with the amount of compute that we're giving developers. Maybe do it as a bit.
It's actually so cool. It's so incredible. So in the context of NVIDIA, I'm assuming given you're building a company that's based off some of their hardware, you're seeing them as like the quintessential company for the next decade for startups like you guys to build your companies as well.
Yeah. We actually just joined NVIDIA's startup program the other day. Yeah, extremely optimistic about NVIDIA. I think they're incredible. Okay,
so you're a defense tech founder. Obviously, the company's also commercial, but it's defense tech as well. Do you get pushback from your friends about building AI drones for warfare?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Oh, I 100% do. I actually not very many of them. Like I mean, most of my friends they're in LA or they're on the West Coast. But yes, I think it's interesting because like obviously more of it is directed towards me.
Yeah.
Because there's like the defense affiliation, and there's also the pro-America affiliation, which I think is actually maybe more frowned upon than the defense capability. But I mean, I think everybody that I know from campus that's like gone out and done anything has gotten a lot of criticism, and someone saying like, you're evil because you work at McKinsey, like you're evil because you work at BCG, like anything really, like there's nothing that you could go out and actually do that's above being problematic in some way.
Right. You would have to literally go to a nonprofit and,
I mean, like, not even that. Like, you can say, like I could say, like, I went there, so I could come up with, like, 15 things to say about how nonprofits are bad for the world in this and that way. So,
okay, so the friends that think you're super cool, what is their reaction to the fact that you're literally building potentially a unicorn? Like, are they just astonished by the fact that you're doing this?
Oh, all of my friends are a lot cooler than I am. So.
Okay, cool. So you're the small.
Yeah, I'm kept very humble by everybody in like the SF LA scene.
I love it. Parents, what impact do they have on you to become a founder?
Oh yeah. I think both my parents encouraged me to be very adventurous. My mom, so she was actually like very much at the forefront of something in her day, which was basically before there was Zoom school in like the 80s and 90s. She was at this company EMG, and she was a teacher. And so she would do like live streaming, remote broadcasting, like to classrooms from like a virtual classroom. So she would travel to all of these different areas, and she would like be in India and live stream a lesson to these kids that had they were like too remote to have normal education all over the world. And she'd be like answering questions and like calling on people from different countries, which was totally new in the 80s and 90s. And so when I was growing up, she took me like traveling with her to a lot of those places, which I think was super like a huge like mind expanding experience for me.
You got a global experience of what the actual people in the world that are like dealing with real shit in their lives have to deal with. And I think that gave you a little bit more sincerity for your position as well.
That you are too kind, but yeah, we do our best.
Okay. So, and what did your dad do? Do you think there was any impact from him?
Yeah. My dad works in energy. Yeah. And I think he like very much encouraged me to take risks. We do a lot of like, we did a lot of hiking together growing up. And we go on like a really serious hiking trip together once a year now, which is super fun. And I think he just, exposed me to a lot of things, like encouraged me to like work really hard, and do things that were like intense and take risks. So.
Are they shocked at what you're doing and the level of success you've already had, or did they kind of know Kat's always been a rock star, she's just gonna keep going?
I mean, I really yeah, I mean, I think they were just glad that like taking a leave of absence wasn't like a huge disaster.
Well, yeah, no, it's fair because I mean, look, parents. I mean, like, I think parents, they set a high bar for their kids, but you've gone above and beyond. I mean, you're not doing some simple shit, dude. You're not working at McKinsey. Like, you're trying to build a really big company that has really big impacts. And so I would imagine parents, like, they're just at some point they're just like, wow, like, I raised a fucking cool kid, you know? Like, it's kind of cool to be a parent with a kid like you. So, okay. Last question for you, Kat. Well, actually, two last questions. Number one, this is for my channel in particular. Do you invest in the stock market? Do you care about stocks at all?
I haven't really, but I'm very curious.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Yeah, I think everyone always wants to know, like, you know, if you're
in
the startup
world, I know what you cover specifically. So yeah, of course I did. I did like ride the GameStop train in 2020.
Oh, wow.
I called myself like a value investor.
Did you use Robinhood to ride the GameStop train?
Oh, like a little, yeah. I mean, of course, yeah.
Okay, I love it. That's great. That's awesome. Okay, so my actual last question for you: you're building a real company. There are a lot of risks in terms of execution of your company succeeding. There is market risk, there's market potential, there's geopolitical risk given the space that you're in, and then there's obviously just the startup risk of like trying to get a product into the market. So I guess it's a two-part question. What progress have you seen tangibly that you're like, oh, this is working, I think we're getting close to product market fit? And then the second part is, are you scared as you operate as a founder that you might fail and you would have to deal with the potential that you failed building a really big company?
Yeah, those are really good questions. So I think the fact that there's like an incumbent product that we're disrupting, we've had, hundreds of conversations. Like, I've sat down and had literally hundreds of conversations with, our spec sheet, with pilots that are in all of these different industries, all of these different countries. So it was very clear to me, like, early on in the process that we had like let's say like spec sheet market fit. Like, it was very clear to me early, like, okay, these are the things that it needs to do that will achieve product market fit in these different industries. Building that and actually have like the user experience that translates to what the pilot actually wants is a different question. And yeah, I just think we have unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable hardware talent. We have like PhDs out of Yale, NASA JPL, really, really, really impressive people that are actually building this, and that are Part 107 pilots themselves, and that are really keenly aware of like what it means to have a drone that's easy to fly, what it means to do design for manufacturing, what it means to solve like all of these really niche, like really sort of cutting edge problems that come up when you're building a drone around a super powerful GPU, which is pretty unusual. And so I think just seeing our team like just slay all those dragons like so quickly, and like with just an expenditure of absolutely like crazy effort, like weekends, nights, and just having it fly reliably and like so well, has been the biggest, like, we're so gonna make it.
Right. Okay. And then the pressure of failing, does that keep you up at night at all, or no?
I mean, I think like I think there wouldn't be meaning if like there wasn't some sort of downside scenario, right? Like, I think you have to, I think anytime you're doing something real, there's a chance that it could not go the way that you want it to. And that's what makes it a real thing. Right.
I love it. Kat Orman, ladies and gentlemen. Kat, thank you for being one of the first podcasts I think one of the first you've done in a while, which means when you become
first podcast. Yeah.
First podcast ever. Wow. That's great.
Yeah, incredible. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was lovely. And I hope you take the rest of your Sunday off.
I love it. Kat, I'll put her description, or I'll put her Twitter in the description. You guys can check her out. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.